Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegrand, G-R-A-N, group at edinarealty.com or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 7-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners. On this episode, David, Dan, and Hoges talk about all the breaking news about your Minnesota Twins, as well as the wild card and divisional series of the 2024 postseason. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning into Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me as always is Dan Thompson, and special third chair in studio, Andrew Hoganson. I know we told you folks that we weren't going to be back until the end of the World Series after we knew how the 2024 season comes to a close. Far too much Twins news, boys, to keep us away.
I want to say one thing. So when you say that Hoges is in studio, I think that's misleading. I think it makes it sound like he's right there next to you, but he's not. He's just on the video chat.
I do think that every single time he says that. I'm like, I don't think so. I think I'm at home. You're at home. Are you somewhere in my basement that I just can't see you right now?
We are all recording. We're all in the same studio. This is the program that we are using currently, Dan, says studio.
Yeah, but you don't
Enter
say like
studio.
Dan is with you. You only use it for me, I feel like.
I use studio in a general. What are you doing? I got to cut all this right before. We didn't even get to anything interesting. And this is where you want to start, is criticizing my use of the word studio. People get it. They don't think that we're in some underground bunker.
I think they think that Hoges drives down to your house every time he's on the show.
I did, too, for a while.
Even if they did, what would it matter? I don't understand.
We like to be honest on this show. And
it's like when you say, with me as always is Dan Thompson. I'm not always with you.
Folks, did you miss us? This is, as you know, hard-hitting baseball news. My goodness. Whenever you two get together, this is ridiculous. I don't even know why I volunteered to do this. I know it's just going to be criticism. I don't even think we hit the minute mark before you guys were already on me about something as trivial as saying in studio. I don't want to get tossed. It's not even about baseball at this point. I don't understand why you guys do this to me.
That was also a really long episode intro. You know, like we're going to talk about a lot of things here. I mean, like there's a lot to discuss. Twins related, tangential. I mean, you have a whole segment on Jurickson Profar in left field at, wherever he's been. I mean, we could make a whole episode out of that, David.
I mean, honestly, the only reason I'm here is to talk about Jerry Jones. I thought that's why you guys wanted me on, because we haven't talked that one to death yet.
Well, that topic, Hoges, actually, believe it or not, a great segue into ownership questions regarding your Minnesota Twins. Obviously, the big news here is that the Pohlads have said that they're going to explore selling the Twins. However, from all of the media reports, it seems likely this isn't like a let's dip our toes in the water. This is the Pohlads want out. They want their money. Nobody in their family cares to run this baseball team, which is hilarious to me because I think the original owner, he has like 60 grandkids. You're telling me not one of those kids cares enough about Twins baseball to want to run the organization?
I mean, certainly Joe doesn't. So that's one off the list. One of the best comments, I think it was on the comment section of The Athletic, and somebody was saying how, hey, we got him, guys. Like they had worn him down because I'm sure the Pohlads are reading The Athletic comment section so much. But
might be. I mean, like, here's the thing. They might be. I think sometimes people just assume that people with that sort of wealth don't care. Have you seen some of the public figures in the world today, Dan? You're telling me none of those people would be petty enough to read the comment section on some of these articles? You're insane.
But they must have somebody to read it for them. I mean, like, somebody's aggregating the comments. They probably have a bot doing it for them through AI or something like that.
That's possible. You're not telling me they have an assistant who's willingly going to go and just shellac them with all of the terrible news directed at them. Like, who's going to take that job knowing that their head is going to be the first to roll if things go south?
They're deep in the forums. That's what they're doing. No, but I think, some of this was kind of preceded, precluded, previewed, whatever you want to call it. When Pohlad had an
teacher, Dan. Find the right words here, buddy.
Foreshadowed. I'm just
going to go 3 or 4 words deep and see if one of these will work. No problem.
But the answers that he had to Aaron Gleeman's questions, because those were terrible answers that he gave.
This was a rough go. Like, Gleeman is obviously upset. We were talking before we went live about how every article that man publishes, I don't know if he's had a couple before he writes them, not because they're not well written, but just because of the anger that just seeps through those words as you're reading them. He really went after the Pohlads as far as wanting to know what this ownership group was going to do regarding the 2025 payroll. And he asked some very pointed questions about why the Pohlads made the business decisions that they have regarding the team. And Joe Pohlad just danced and danced and danced and never would give a straight answer regarding what the 2025 payroll would be, just that we're going to put a better product on the field.
I think that's what was so frustrating, though. Like, you expect guys in that situation to dance around the answers. But he didn't even dance around and give a good answer. It was still a bad, rambling answer. It was so frustrating. And all I could think about with reading like all of Gleeman's articles for like that 2-week stretch where I thought he was going to burn down Target Field was I would have loved to read the first couple drafts. Like, what did those look like before the editor was like, you can't write that. Like, they're going to never let you in the building again.
So a quick note here about those interviews. I think that there were a couple of quotes that become a lot more sensible now that we know that the Pohlads are planning to sell. First of all, the right size the business quote from the beginning of this season, where they said they weren't going to spend any big money on any of the big free agents who were out there. Now it becomes patently obvious what he meant by that is we are right sizing the business for sale, but not right sizing the business as a business model.
I get that, but it still doesn't make any sense why. I mean, I feel like they lost value with the Twins in this last year by cutting payroll by $30 million because they
actually gained 5% over 2023.
Their decisions aren't what made that value go up. That's just Major League Baseball going up as a whole. I mean, it would have gone up more if they wouldn't have done what they did here. I mean, that's what's so frustrating about it. You finally, I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum, but you finally have a year where you make the playoffs, you end the 20-year streak, you win a game, like you do something, and then to just get rid of all of that goodwill. And you talked about it, David, when you were there at the end of the season, and it felt like just like a Tuesday in March instead of times where they're actually still playing for a playoff berth. And that was so disappointing. Granted, a lot of that was from product on the field, but it's all a direct result of this ownership. I mean, it's good news ultimately, but all of those answers, I think, make me more angry in retrospect because you could have, I don't know. It's just, have they not had any sort of like public relations training at all? It's just so bizarre to me.
Well, and it reminds me, we were talking about this, Hogs, I think at some point, was Craig Leopold, the Wild owner, even just a couple days before the Pohlads announced that they were going to explore selling, was talking about how much he wants to win a championship with the Wild, and he's trying to do everything he can. Now, you can question his choices along those lines, but I would question whether the Pohlads were even trying to win a championship. It doesn't seem like they were.
No. David has talked about this a million times over. That $30 million, you get a reliever and a starter, and this team is a playoff caliber team. And as we've seen in the playoffs so far this year, there's not any great teams. The Dodgers appear to be a bit of a juggernaut, but they didn't even win 100 games this year. Like, it was wide open this year. The Twins had that window. The Tigers and the Royals both made it to the divisional series. I think even with the product that we have right now, we're a better team than both of those teams are. And I think that's just what's just so killer about all of this.
I think what frustrated me the most was Pohlad's response about how, well, hey, 3/4 of the way through the season, we were in position to make the postseason. But I think that obviously misses the elephant in the room, that if anything goes wrong, I don't know, Correa goes down for a couple of months and Buxton goes down for a month and Joe Ryan has an injury that's going to keep him out for the rest of the season. Like, any moves you could have made that were preventative, you could have stayed in that position.
When they ran out of gas.
But I hate the argument that, we were in position, so it really isn't about the payroll. That's not the issue here. No, clearly it is, because had you upgraded the roster or given depth where it was needed, this wouldn't have been an issue.
I think the depth thing is a huge point too. Like, they ran out of gas. That's what it was. And if you don't do that, I mean, you're in the playoffs.
We all have jobs where we have bosses, and I think a lot of bosses have that same level of disconnect, right? Where they're not listening to what, we or other employees are actually telling them we need, right? They're just saying, well, we've given you everything that you asked for. It's like, no, you haven't. No. We have all these requests and you're just ignoring us, which I think you have a good question on here, David. What is the primary responsibility of a professional sports team's owner, do you think?
Yeah, so the reason this came up is because my brother and I, brother Dan, I have a lot of Dans in my life. Some would argue maybe one too many. But I have a lot of Dans in my life. But brother Dan and I don't get in nearly as many arguments as Dan Thompson and I do. But we got into a pretty, I'd say, hefty argument regarding Twins ownership. And my perspective about a sports owner is that the owner's primary responsibility is to construct a team in the best way possible to win championships. And my brother's contention is, no, the owner's responsibility is to make money. And he concedes the point that probably the best way to do that is by putting a better product on the field. However, I would point to the 2023 Twins as showing that's not the case, because they cut payroll to save money, assuming that their bottom line would be better, putting a worse product on the field. So my argument is, sports ownership is not just owning any other business. Sports ownership is caring about the fans and the team and wanting to see the team succeed. It's not about how much money you're getting back in return.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I think you're being a little bit butterflies and rainbows with we just want all these owners to just spend all that they can and win for us all the time. Because ultimately, they didn't get to where they are with being billionaires with that attitude. But I agree with you.
What? You're telling me that Steve Cohen's attitude wasn't wake up in the morning, spend $300 billion on the Mets
Well, that's what I'm saying.
in order to make sure they win a championship?
Yeah, exactly. That is 100% what he's doing, but he doesn't care at all. Like, he is the richest owner in sports.
That's what I'm saying the ownership perspective should be.
I get that. I get that. And I don't think that you're wrong at all in that, but a lot of them don't think like that. The Pohlads clearly do not think like that. They are in there to make money and to write. That's what they're using all these quotes for. So you can definitely make that argument that is a bad way to do ownership. And I mean, I think at this day and age in North America for North American sports, owners are in it for fun. Like, this isn't what is their money-making thing. So ultimately, I am agreeing with you. I think you are right. But to think that most of them, Steve Cohen being probably an exception to that rule for sure, most of them still want to make money out of this. That's just who they are. They're greedy, and that's what they go after.
Now, if I can make a quick soccer comparison, I don't know if you guys have looked at the financials of Premier League teams in European
all the
soccer.
Time. You don't?
Sorry, in English soccer. But let me tell you something, boys. So many of those owners and franchises are in the negative by a long stretch. Why? They want to play football at the top tier level in the world, and they want to win it all. And I just think that perspective is what sports are about. And I think that there's something to be said. Oh my goodness, I hate the direction I'm going talking about.
If you say Jerry Jones,
hang on, just listen to me for a second here. The emotional attachment that fans have to their football clubs in England is not rivaled by sports fans in America.
Who are you?
Just hear me out. That's why soccer is so interesting to me in the documentary style, where I only have to watch the goals and I don't have to watch a whole game. And so I just think that an owner, what a finish. An owner's mentality should be that of a Premier League football owner, which is, it doesn't matter how much it costs, let's win.
So what do you think the odds of Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney buying the Twins here now then?
Now, to be fair,
there you go.
Because I liked Welcome to Wrexham so much, and how I said I was all butterflies and rainbows here? I very much am, especially after watching that show, because I'm like, they didn't buy it for money. They bought it to revitalize the town that was struggling. So I have a hard time believing that they're gonna invest in the Twins at this point. I think they have enough problems of their own on the other side of the pond.
All right, so let me get this straight. So, David, you like... You like Formula One racing. You clearly love soccer. You like
only
cricket.
Documentary soccer. Where
and the Dallas Cowboys.
And the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh man, you're a true Brit. That's what you are.
I don't mind tea, honestly. Like, I'm a coffee guy, but I'll drink a cup of tea, no problem. Oh, it's so funny, their names too. Earl Grey? Who's Earl? Like English breakfast? This isn't food. It's a drink. I don't understand what's happening here. Chamomile? Isn't that what you put on your skin when you get mosquito bites? What are they doing over there?
It's calamine. Calamine.
What are you going to do? It's all the same. I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. Were there any other thoughts on sports ownership before we get a little bit more into sort of the ramifications of what this means and sort of a little bit of the history of the Pohlads? So I think it will help people understand why they're selling and sort of all of the fun that we poke at them for being pocket protectors and really only in it for the money. I think if you watch the historical trends, I think that's pretty accurate.
Can we just all agree that this is good news, though, that we're excited that whoever comes in is most likely not going to be as bad as they were? And I mean, even though they we're the 10th richest owners in baseball. You got to think that there's going to be more money eventually invested into this team.
Yeah, I want an owner who is not in it to make money. I don't care if they do make money, but I want an owner who wants to invest in this team because they want to lift up a trophy at the end of the season.
I think that I am decently happy about it, knowing that baseball has no interest in moving the Twins.
Yes.
I think if there was any question there, I would be super worried. But the fact that they feel pretty darn stable in Minnesota makes me feel okay about this. But there's also this nagging part of me that's like, careful what you wish for. Like, could somebody out there be cheaper than the Pohlads and less interested? Or who's going to even decide? The Pohlads are going to decide. Are they just going to look for somebody who's kind of like them?
No, that would be dumb. They're looking for somebody who's going to pay them the most money, Dan, is what's happening here.
I couldn't handle A-Rod being the Twins owners. I just have to say that right now. Like, I think I've talked myself into it for the Wolves if that ends up happening. But I can't have it be A-Rod. He cannot be the owner of the Twins.
What about Derek Jeter?
No.
Does he still own part of the Marlins?
Yeah,
or is he
might be out of that now. I'm not sure.
Okay, hang on. We had a great segue, and now we've gone off topic here. So Dan mentioned the moving of the team, and why I think that's a great segue is because if we all remember at the end of Y2K, right, the Twins were about to be contracted with the Expos, and the only thing that prevented the Twins from going through that process is a judge said no because they still owed money on the Metrodome. So the Pohlads at that point, they didn't care if the Twins left. They just wanted to take the money and run. So right there is firm a proof as you can get that the Pohlads did not care about winning a championship. And I sort of hate that there's so many people on Twitter right now defending the Pohlads. They brought 2 World Series championships. Do you think the World Series teams for this Minnesota Twins team won them because of the payroll and the influence of the Pohlads? No, it didn't.
Well, another part of that was we had just lost the North Stars 10 years before. So I think that there was just a lot of fear of losing. I mean, can you imagine that? If they had lost both of those teams in a decade, that would have been the most Minnesota thing ever.
We would have been Iowa.
I still think about that year all the time. I mean, that may have been the most fun year to be a Twins fan because you go through it. I mean, I was 11 years old when all of this is happening. You go through one of the most like emotional seasons of your life where you think you're going to lose like the team that you care the most about. And then you finally make it into the playoffs for the first time in forever in a year and win a series. I mean, it was so much fun.
And then they made a movie about the other team. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, man.
But they never portray accurately. That is the one thing about Moneyball that drives me nuts. Is that they leave out the whole ending.
They do. Denny Hawkins getting hurt.
Yeah.
I think that's enough on the sale of the Twins. Obviously, we're sort of on the edge of our seats. I just hope we don't have to sit there too long. My concern, and I'm sure your concerns as well, is about the 2025 team and what this does to the moves that they may or may not make in the offseason. I'm sort of thinking they're not going to invest in the team. I mean, your options are really, they invest heavily because they want to increase the value of the team by putting a better product on the field, or they're like, hey, we're getting out right now. Why would we care? We don't want to spend any more money on this team because it's not going to be ours soon.
I want to build a championship culture.
Sorry, I just thought Carlos Correa would have something to say. I think in this moment here.
I think that Carlos Correa's words have fallen on deaf ears since last offseason as well as the trade deadline. I think that they can say that, well, Correa would really like us to do this. And the Pohlads say, well, Correa is being paid by us. So I think we're going to do what we want to do.
Hey, but at least you guys are going to be able to watch these baseball games for, a flat rate of, $99 a year? Welcome to streaming baseball. It's pretty great.
It's a whole new world, Dan. And I think we need, before we talk about the 2025 deal, we need to mention how terrible the 2024 TV deal was and just how the Twins should honestly be ashamed. It was clearly about the money for the Pohlads. They had no interest in making sure that Twins fans could watch these games. The fact that half of Twins territory got blacked out with the Comcast debacle. How are you, Dave St. Peter, the guy who sort of heads up that part of the franchise, how did you not ensure that your fans could actually watch your product? It's ridiculous.
I still can't get over that. I don't think we talked about it enough, like how dumb that whole process was and how, besides even the payroll and everything, this was by far, I think, the most alienating thing for this team in 2024. It's just embarrassing. It's just a total letdown that they couldn't fix. And now I'm happy. Obviously, I'm happy, but it just feels like it's just a year too late and embarrassingly so. The contract was up last year. They did not have to do anything of what they did last year. That was totally their decision. And they knew that Diamond and Comcast was fighting too. So all all of the ramifications of that were not a surprise either. I think that's the biggest embarrassment that this team has had in the last year. It's so weird to me that Dan could watch these games last year while you and I couldn't if we didn't have or weren't paying hand over fist for it. And then it's still weird to me too that with being a Twins season ticket holder, I can watch every single other MLB game for free except for the team that I'm a season ticket holder of. Like, what are we doing?
But like, this is a problem that baseball has in its whole model, right? Because you have these big deals for, I think, the Dodgers and the Yankees. They have, I mean, obviously it's about the money. I think baseball would love to be able to pull all of the teams under one umbrella deal, but it's those big teams that won't allow that because they're making way more money. So I think, yes, the Twins obviously should have had some more foresight to deal with it for themselves. I think they were naively thinking that they would be able to negotiate a better deal with Bally or Diamond or whomever. And it's not there in a market like the Twins where it might be in San Diego, in, Texas, in Florida, wherever these things might be.
Yeah, so a couple of notes here about the 2025 deal. So again, this will be a stream direct to customer. And so there'll be a couple of options. It's not exactly clear what the specifics are going to be, but basically you can either have a streaming option or you can actually watch it on its own channel if you're a cable satellite person. No real word yet on how that will work. And again, we're sort of guesstimating the cost will be similar to this season. But if the Pohlad stay in charge, it'll probably be double, I would think, than what other teams are charging.
I think the biggest thing to take home, too, is they think they reached like 1 million people last year, and they think this will be 4 million or something like that. It's like a 4 times increase, which is just bananas that they didn't do that earlier, but I guess here we are.
Yeah, and obviously, as we mentioned, this will mean less revenue for the team, which I think is partly why the Pohlads are so willing to cut bait at this point. But Dave St. Peter said that this should not require a decrease in payroll. I think the payroll stuff is so up in the air because I don't really want to even speculate about the payroll, though. Because I think, I don't think anybody knows. I don't even know if the Pohlheads know what they're going to do yet for payroll.
Yeah, Dave St. Peter saying anything about what it'll do means absolutely nothing to me. Let's see what it actually is when the season starts.
A couple notes here sort of tangentially connected to that. Provis and Morneau will stay on the TV calls, but it is unclear about the rest of Bally Sports North. Laudner and Anthony LaPanta. I don't know how all those guys are going to factor into this move. I do know that Dick Bramer will not be returning in case any of you were hoping that would be the case. That is confirmed. He will not be on this direct streaming option.
I miss him. I miss him because I miss Provis on the radio.
Well, okay, so I think Provis is going to be gone in a few years. I think the more that David has planted this idea in my head that Provis has bigger and better things in mind, the more that I buy that. He's not a Minnesotan, and he's really good, right, first of all, but he does all of these one-off things, and it's like, after a while, you keep doing those one-off things, and you're like, what are you doing? Are you not satisfied with the Twins? I think we see him for a few more seasons, and then he gets swooped up and he does national stuff, and we'll hear him occasionally.
Yeah, it'd be quite disappointing, but I just hope Atterbury doesn't get the TV spot, man. Oh, my heart.
But then he'd be off the radio, right?
I guess I wouldn't hate it. I could mute the TV and just watch it then, and then maybe there'd be someone else on the radio.
I don't know why I feel so much more guilty about like attacking Atterbury in that way. I think it's because we're sort of doing the same thing on the mic here that he does, and so it just feels closer. Like it feels like we're colleagues of a sort. Us obviously, like maybe not colleagues. We're in a building that's a couple buildings away from the big building that he's in, but we're doing kind of the same thing.
I know why I feel bad about it.
But hold on, but we're all in different buildings right now.
That
we're
is
not
true.
in the
We
same
are not
room
in
studio.
studio.
Oh my
together,
goodness.
right?
Well, now I can't cut that from the beginning of the episode. Thanks for that, Dan. Great. Wonderful. Super helpful, obviously.
I know why I feel bad is because the reason I don't like him is because I don't like the sound of his voice, and that's just cruel.
Okay, well, with that, let's push forward here to the last bit of news here from the Twins' perspective before we get into the postseason. So the Twins have made some moves as far as the coaching staff, as well as the mystery man himself, the invisible man, Thad Levine. It comes out now that he has not been renewed. He will not be with the team next season, along with hitting coach Dave Popkins, the rest of the batting coaches. They just said, all of you are gone. Tony Diaz, and you know who's still on the roster, though, here, boys? Our boy Tommy Watkins, just a survivor if there ever was.
That was my first thought. 100% my first thought when I saw all the coaches that they were letting go. I was like, oh, not Watkins. He's sticking around.
Watkins and Conger, they will still be at first and third base.
We don't know that. I mean, they might maybe they'll switch him up this year.
I would rather have Hank Conger at third than Watkins.
Why?
At third.
Do you think because he's great at sending people to second?
No, I think No, I just don't want Watkins at third. I guess I would have a hard time believing that anybody else would be a downgrade from Tommy Watkins.
Yeah, what do you guys think about this, though? I guess my initial thoughts are meh. Like, I mean, yeah, a lot of the young guys had a pretty good, solid sophomore slump this year, but Wallner ended up doing well. I don't know. I think when you get to the major league level, I'm not entirely sure how much I care about those off coaches, but I mean, I do think they make an impact, but I don't know if this is going to solve any of the Twins' woes.
Can't they just hire some of those guys from Grand Slam? I mean, they seem to do wonders.
Driveline, David. It's called Driveline.
No,
Triple play?
Triple play? I always, Chuck E. Cheese, I always get them all confused.
No, there's got to be some value to batting coaches. Otherwise, teams wouldn't have them, right? Or maybe that's the whole Moneyball argument, is that maybe that's something we just assume. Have you ever worked in an office, Dan? There's a lot of people working in an office who, well, they must do something because they have them. They have a parking spot. Like, they have to be there doing something. I think a breath of fresh air is good, but obviously with hitters, too, I mean, so much of it is about just getting out of your own way and just going up and swinging the bat, which, by the way,
I think most major leaguers would disagree with that. Like, yeah, just go up there and swing the bat. It's not that hard.
It's incredibly hard. No, but like,
it's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
But haven't you watched? You know how they have the ump cams in the playoffs here, right? And the ball's coming at them. I don't know. That actually makes me feel a little bit better about my chances of hitting a baseball.
100%. I hate that you said that because every time I see that, I'm like, that doesn't look that difficult. That looks like what it looked like when I played baseball. They don't throw that much harder.
You serious?
You're both ridiculous.
I'm the new rookie.
You are both. There's no way if you stood in a Major League Baseball batting box that you're going to swing and make contact at these balls.
I think I'd be a solid 200 hitter.
Hold on. Better than Miguel Sano? Is that what you're saying?
We need some. Mendoza is the correct reference there, Dan. But we need a sounder for trolling because that is just ridiculous, Hogs. Absolutely insane. You're both terrible.
I was just saying it doesn't look as hard as I thought, right? So it can still be difficult. I just think, I don't know. I mean, if Otani can do it, can't I?
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Enough. I don't even know. Are
you searching for a sounder right now?
I don't even know what sounder to hit. Again, I don't have a trolling sounder. I guess this one?
There we go.
Let's go. Because you're both cartoons for thinking that's the truth, is the reason there. Okay, last note here, boys, before we get into the 2024 postseason results thus far. Hogs, you sent a text that is just, wow, you are full of terrible takes and trolling and lies, but I'm going to let you sort of tell the folks what you texted Dan and I, and then try and rationalize it while Dan and I sit here and drink our beverages.
So I stand by this one still. I texted you both, and I know you've chastised me multiple times already that I'm not allowed to talk about the Twins 2024 season until I recap. But I texted you both, and I said I would have rather been a White Sox fan this season than a Twins fan. The White Sox finished a record-setting 41 and 121, but the Twins had
121 losses.
Yeah, but the Twins' collapse was so much worse. And for basically the beginning third of the season and the last third of the season, we played as bad as the White Sox. It was just a nice little stretch in the middle right there. I loved what Dan said when you guys were talking about, was this the most disappointing Twins season ever? And his answer was great, because no, it's not. Because like the year that we had Liriano and Santana when we were going into the playoffs and they lost, when Liriano got hurt, that hurt way more. It's more in the moment. You're alive that day, and then you lose in the playoffs and you're done. That heartbreak there, you just can't equal that. Even last year, after they lost to the Astros, like that was incredibly heartbreaking. This year wasn't like that. It was a slow burn. But I still think like the season as a whole, not counting the playoffs and the last day of the season, I think this was the worst. Because you went from like at the beginning thinking like, okay, we're good. We're gonna compete again. We got Correa, to being, no, we're bad. We're really bad. And then finally like, oh, I'll never make judgment calls in April anymore. The Twins are great again. And then to just falling off the face of the earth at the end of the year. The White Sox were just bad all year. You still got baseball. You just didn't have any hope for the whole year. And I would rather not have that hope than have it and not even make the playoffs. I will stand by, if you make the playoffs, that's better than any other year ever. It doesn't matter because you always have a chance. Look at the freaking Mets right now. Like it's incredible. The White Sox fan didn't get their hearts broken at all this year. And I got mine broken like 4 times.
Don't give me hope.
So hold on. Hogs, you would rather not have any hope.
None. Just give me, if I know it's going to end in not making the playoffs, when I think they're in the playoffs the entire year, let's just have it be a team that you just, let's go to the ballpark, watch some baseball for a while.
I think the issue that I'm having is that the Twins still won twice as many games as the White Sox did.
But they don't matter.
So,
none of that matters if you don't make the playoffs. And they have an owner. People can get on Jerry, however you pronounce his last name, all you want. They still spent a lot more money than the Twins did.
And look what it got him. I think that's like Joe Pohlad's like exhibit number 1 for why he didn't spend more money. Yeah,
there was a lot of things that went wrong in that organization. Now, I'm not going to give any
Grady Sizemore was not one of them, for the record.
He wasn't.
Let me stand by Grady.
You must have like a Guardians thing, don't you? Is there like just some sort of like poll that you have with Francona?
Just a part of me. I remember there was a Sports Illustrated cover that said Grady Sizemore was like the next star, right? And so I drafted him in all my fantasy leagues. I thought Grady Sizemore is going to be the guy, and then he did not. So maybe that's part of it. But I do like Tito. It's weird. Well, we'll get to this. But the Guardians are winning baseball games. David says the Guardians aren't good, and yet here they are in the ALCS.
They're not. It bothers me so much that they've won. I cannot get over it. It bothers me to no end. Let's go ahead and jump into the 2024 postseason. Quick note here, folks. If you're a first-time listener, congratulations that you landed on this episode, which is more of a scatter shot. We're typically pretty consistent. We go through a series recap, and then we have segments that we hit. This is very much a one-off episode, just talking about the big Twins news, as well as the 2024 postseason results thus far. Thank you so much for listening. We'll have a season recap at the end of the season after the World Series, and then we hope to have you back next season. But with that, the 2024 postseason, boys, the first day of the postseason is so fun because you have baseball from like 11 a.m. until like 11 p.m. It's fantastic. But the one theme that we saw, folks, is that even with replay, the umpires still managed to get 3 different calls wrong on day 1 of the postseason. How is that possible when no one looks at these videos and comes away with the same conclusion that the umpires came away with?
I think the most egregious one was the Yankees game where Jazz Chisholm was called safe at second when the replay clearly showed that he was out, and that changed the shape of that entire series, arguably, because the Royals might win that game. And you mess up one call, you mess up one game, that can be the whole series. That's one of the reasons that I don't necessarily love the short series there. I kind of wish it was a best of 7 already in the ALDS, but you get what you get. But it is baffling. I mean, New York only has to monitor 4 games, and not even all at the same time, like they would in the major, and normally where they got 15 going.
The ones that have been driving me crazy are like the foul balls, too, because you can't review that if it happens before the base. Like the Phillies have a huge argument against the Mets. I think it was like the 7th inning of game 4. It's frustrating that we get this far and the umpires get talked about so much. I mean, even strike zones have been super inconsistent too. Baseball can't get out of its own way with umpires, but I mean, maybe that's part of the game though for now, I suppose.
We don't have time to be talking about robo-umps right now here, boys. I just wanted to point out that even with screens and replay, they're still terrible. One other thing to mention here, 3 of the top 5 payrolls remain in the postseason. The Mets, the Yankees, and the Dodgers. The Astros and the Phillies are now out, but those round out your top 5. It's almost like if you spend more money on a team, there's a better chance they do well and like make a run in the postseason.
Who would have thought? That doesn't make any sense.
You would think, that assistant that Dan was talking about who would like, collate all of the negative responses on athletic articles for these billionaire owners. Do you think ever one of them would come up to the owner and say, there seems to be a trend with teams that spend money. They seem to be beating that dead horse. They seem to do better than our team for some reason.
All right, can we move forward here? All right.
No.
You have notes
never.
even on the wild card series here.
Brief notes on the wild card.
All right.
Nothing too crazy. But so my first question just to you boys here. Let's assume through some crazy happenstance where like the Twins continued to win baseball games for the last third of the season. Do you think in the state that they were in at the end of the season, let's say the Tigers went on a 5-game losing streak at the end there and the Twins snuck in, do you think that they could have beaten the Astros in the wild card in Houston?
I still think so because I think if you have Ober and Lopez pitch 8 innings of 1-run ball and you score 2 runs, you can win. I mean, we have better.
Yeah, it's the scoring 2 runs. That's what's less likely in that scenario.
It's true.
Ober and Lopez each throwing 8 innings of 1-run ball is more likely than the Twins scoring 2 runs.
It's true. I don't think the Astros were that good this year. I think we finally are seeing the end of that dynasty, and I couldn't be happier.
I do think you're right about that. I think the Astros are fading. I still find it hard to see the Twins winning anything at that point, but if they had gotten in by winning some baseball games, like if they had gone 5-1 on the homestand there at the end, then yeah, I think that I could have seen them do that because with some momentum, but the way that they lost those games in the Marlins and the Orioles series, no way.
That's the thing too. Like their offense was gone the last 2 weeks, just completely disappeared.
So then moving on here, the Astros were taken care of by Detroit, very business-like, I'd say. Only one Game 3 in the wild card round, and that was between the Mets and the Brewers, and these were some fun games to watch. I know I'm a closeted, actually not even closeted, I'm a big Pete Alonso guy, but Game 3 here in the wild card series, 9th inning, a 3-run go-ahead home run. I nearly cried, I have to be honest. And what I love about this is John Boy Media did a breakdown almost as soon as the game ended, and it turns out that the Brewers closer Williams was tipping his pitches, and so that's why they got to him in the 9th. My goodness, I feel for that guy. I'm sure that night was a very rough night for him, because clearly somebody would have said something to him that, hey man, we have to address this.
Yeah, I can't imagine being a Brewers fan. I got a lot of Brewers fans from going to college in Madison, and a lot of them were at that game, and that had to have been absolutely miserable. I mean, talk about like most disappointing ends to a season, being up by a run going into the 9th inning, thinking you're going to go on to the NLDS and losing in that fashion, and then finding out that you're one of the best closers in the game is tipping pitches. Like, oh, I can't imagine that.
Well, I'm curious too. The rest of the season, was this just because of like the playoff atmosphere and he sort of wasn't paying attention to his normal checks? Because you can't imagine he pitched so well all season and the Mets were just like holding this in their back pocket. Like, okay, well, we know this is happening.
Yeah, I think it would have had to have been nerves in some capacity. Good on the Mets for recognizing it. That's the part of the gamesmanship of baseball, unfortunately. Well, no, not unfortunately. That is part of it, right? You have to be able to conceal whether you're throwing a changeup or a fastball. Like, that's part of the sport.
So, and then the Orioles and Royals, I don't know what happened to the Orioles, but they only scored 1 run in those 2 games. They lost, but they only gave up 3 runs in total. I mean, these were low-scoring affairs. It's just really disappointing that the Orioles couldn't find any offense.
Well, and that was after last offseason, too, where they went in, and I think they had a bye, and then they got swept, and they got knocked out of the ALDS pretty quickly. I do feel bad for them. They had a great season. And to Hoges' point earlier, that does sting really bad when you get into the playoffs, and then it all comes crashing down. When you have, I mean, they certainly had aspirations and hopes of winning the World Series this year, and they had a team to do it. That lineup was brutal. We saw what they did to the Twins. I guess that was more an indictment of the Twins than it was a celebration of what the Orioles could do.
But it does go to show you, though, like with the Tiger, I mean, I know the Royals were cold going in, so this kind of nullifies my point, but the Orioles had a really bad, like, last month of the season. Tigers had a great end of the season. Baseball is such a streaky sport. If you catch fire at the right time, you're good, but it was kind of fun until the Yankees started winning. The AL East just had an epic losing streak going in the playoffs, and I loved it because the AL Central was showing up.
Yeah, and then the other note here is that the Braves clearly not at 100%. I think the injuries finally caught up with them. The Padres made quick work of them. And obviously the doubleheader before your playoff series that they had to play on Monday before the series started on Tuesday probably didn't help their chances.
No, but it didn't hurt the Mets. I mean, they went out and took care of business in Milwaukee.
Well, but here's the thing. The Mets won Game 1 of that doubleheader, which means that they didn't have to win Game 2.
But they still played. They still played a lot of their guys. Like, I know they did not their pitchers necessarily, but I was surprised that, like, I know Lindor didn't play with his back and everything, but like Alonso played the whole second game. It was surprising to me that they didn't just clean slate it for that second game.
Hey, well, Pete Alonso is the man, so that's why he played in that second game.
It's their rival, though. I mean, like, they wanted to beat the Braves. They wanted to knock the Braves out of things. I think that's why.
I would have bet all of the money I had if I lived in a state that allowed gambling on the Braves to win that second game, though, because whoever was going to win the first game was going to lose that second game of that doubleheader.
Sure.
With that here, moving on to the divisional series, let's start with the Dodgers and Padres, because the Dodgers win this 3-2 over the Padres. A fantastic series. I watched a ton of these games. A bit of a letdown that it was the NLDS as opposed to the NLCS. I think to see these teams go in a best of 7 would have been super exciting. As Dan mentioned, I have this thing I have to talk about, and it's bothered me since I saw it happen. It's game 2 of the series. Profar's in left, and he robs a Mookie Betts home run. However, he doesn't reveal it until after the fans and the Dodgers celebrate, and Betts is rounding like second base. Betts is still rounding the bases as if he hit a home run. And then Profar shows that he catches this ball, which is, I don't know how you guys, let's stop there before I get to the rest of it. But what are your thoughts on guys not revealing that they robbed a home run?
Julio Rodriguez did a very similar thing for the Mariners earlier this year, but I think he was at home, and I think that matters a little bit. Now, it's a bold move by Profar, right, to do that there. So I kind of like it from a competitive standpoint. He's a guy that I think is pretty well liked around the league. That's kind of the sense that I get. He's not, like a what's his name, Tommy Pham and the guy that he punched. but
Jock Peterson.
Thank you very much. I think it was fine. I don't think he was a jerk about it. I thought it was hilariously entertaining.
Do I even need to answer? You know I loved it. You know I loved every single moment of it. But I would say if I were a Dodgers fan, I would have hated it. I would have hated it. But that's part of why I love it, because I love when that whole game was epic. Like they were just Tatis dancing out in the outfield and getting them all ticked off at him. I loved that too. Again, if I were a Dodgers fan, I would have hated that with everything in me. But there's hatred between those two teams. There's a rivalry, and it was really, really fun to watch. And to the whole Profar thing, he got in Mookie's head because Mookie hit a home run in Game 3 and started running back to the dugout because he thought Profar robbed him again. And everyone's like, no, dude, you hit it out.
Okay, so let's continue this story now. So Profar then comes out the next inning, and he gives a ball to a fan as what I am taking as a nice gesture. I have no way to verify that's what it was.
It was the fan that he robbed it from, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, but so I think he was doing this as like a gesture to give the ball to the fan as like a fun souvenir. And this is assuming, again, that Profar did this, like, it's just Profar saying, hey man, I was just having fun with you. I didn't mean to like cause any gruff or whatever, have this ball. And I'm thinking, if I'm the fan who he robbed it from, as ticked as I was the last inning that he like stole it and then did the whole like pretend to not rob it thing, I think what a cool memory. And like you have this ball and like it's a cool thing that you're going to be able to talk about. You can put on your mantle and like and discuss. But the fan throws the ball back out onto the field. And then other Dodgers fans start throwing baseballs that they have for some reason onto the field at Profar. Now, again, this is all assuming that Profar did this with good intentions and didn't do it mockingly, like, hey, here's a ball because you're not going to catch one. Because if he said that, I mean, that's kind of hilarious, but also kind of mean. I'm assuming he's doing this as a nice gesture. Wouldn't you guys have hung on to that ball? Like, even though it's an opposing player, I think that's just such a cool story and such a cool item to have.
Well, they had a cool moment because after he robbed the home run, the fan and him kind of pointed and the fan laughed at it. Like, I think the fan legitimately thought what Profar did was funny. Granted, hated him for it, but like thought it was funny. So when he handed him the ball, I kind of stealing from John Boy here because I agree completely with what he said. I think him throwing the ball back was kind of funny too, being like, no, I don't want that anymore. But then obviously you can make an argument that that's what led to everything else being thrown on, the game getting paused for 12 minutes and all of that. So I think he probably should have held on to it. I do think it was kind of a little bit funny though to just be like, no, I don't want that. No, we're enemies here. We're not going to get all lovey-dovey here yet.
I like that part of it. It's all the other stupid fans throwing baseballs at Profar.
Yeah.
And this is why I don't like fans, generally. And I love listeners, right? But the fans of baseball that go to those games put way too much of their identity into the outcome of those baseball games to lose a little bit of perspective to say, these are people out here. That part of it just annoys me to no end.
Scream at them all you want. Like, all of that is fun. But when you're throwing that at the players, it's just, you became a child. Like, what are you doing? It's the same thing like the malice at the palace when the players are going into the stands and start punching people. Like, come on, there is a clear and definitive line in between like just trash talking and having a good time with it, even if you're not really having a good time with it, and actually like trying to physically harm someone. I mean, what are we doing?
Yeah, we all just want meta world peace. That's all we're after. Sorry.
Was that a Ron Artest reference, by the way? Is that his name?
Yeah, it was.
All right. I just want to make sure.
But,
it's not funny when you explain it after it's been...
Sorry,
that was supposed to be a deep cut. Because that's an NBA reference. We don't normally do those on the show. But so another note here. This is getting a little bit ridiculous. The countdowns to Ohtani's upcoming at-bats. Now, okay, this makes sense in like the NBC Olympics, right? Where they're like, Simone Biles is coming up on the vault in 2 turns or whatever. Ohtani's turn in the batting order when the guy's going to go 1 for 4. Like, dude, Relax. This is ridiculous.
All the memes though with Bryce Harper when they got eliminated, and it was saying like 340 days until, or what? No, it's not that long, but like whatever it actually is until he's gonna bat again was pretty funny. I thought that Mets fans were doing.
Money, last note here on the Dodgers-Padres series. Manny Machado throws a ball to the Dodgers dugout with too much speed, I guess, and it hits the railing in front of the manager for the Dodgers, Roberts. Again, maybe I'm just too far removed from what's happened here, but clearly this was a faux pas. He threw the ball too hard and not in the right spot, and I mean, I watched that replay a few times.
Oh, it was nothing. Dave Roberts made it sound like they should take Machado outside and shoot him for doing it. I mean, it was just obnoxious.
You underestimate my power.
I'm stealing from John Boy way too much right now, but I thought Plouffe had a great argument about this where he was just like, yeah, he did it to annoy him when he threw it into the dugout, for sure, because normally you throw that into your own dugout instead of the opposing team's dugout. But for like Ken Rosenthal going on The Athletic and calling it the sinister sling about 900 times, I loved that the Padres were like, we're not interviewing with you, because that's what they did in the next game. They refused to do any in-game interviews with Ken Rosenthal because he just acted like Machado was a child. And it was a little bit chippy, and Machado even kind of admitted that he did it to annoy him because they hit Tatis. I don't know. I like that in baseball. He didn't hurt anyone. He didn't have any intention to hurt anyone. The fact that they're like saying it almost hit Dave Roberts, it really wasn't that close. And if it would have hit him, it would have been like the equivalent of someone like patting someone on the back, which we'll get to in that in a little bit. But it's just, to me, I loved it in the game when they got all feisty about it. Even Roberts just going way over the top. But like everyone acting like Machado is back to his antics and everything was like that was just, come on, can we have a little bit of fun? Like, that's not over the line. Like, he's definitely poking the bear, but they hit Tatis, and that was kind of his response to it, which is the tamest response ever.
Yeah, it's better than going back and hitting Ohtani or something like that. It's more subtle. It's more interesting. I think it's a lot more fun. And these guys have played each other 13 times already this year, heading into this series, and they have a lot of playoff history on top of that too. So
but Machado was on the Dodgers too for a while. So
yeah, I mean, it's an entertaining series to be sure.
So moving on then, the Yankees over the Royals, they win this one 3-1, and I think the standout performance in this series has got to be Bob Costas, who should not be allowed to call MLB games unless it's on the Yankee Entertainment Station, because my goodness, watching this game, I could not believe the words that came out of his mouth. It's like the 8th inning. There's a ball hit to the shortstop. Bobby Witt Jr. makes a great diving play, throws to second. They throw to first to get Stanton into a double play. And Giancarlo Stanton has a, I don't know, his hamstring got removed, I guess, or something. I don't know. But so Bob Costas, first of all, the way that he called the play bothered me to no end. He makes no mention of Witt's great play. Then he says, they get the force at second. What are you talking? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, they got the force at second, but you didn't mention everything that led. And they're like, can they get 2? Yes, they can. And then he says words that I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say, not just in the announcing booth, just in general. He goes, that's not Giancarlo's fault. It's not his fault, that he's playing, he's hobbled. I'm like, whose fault is it, Bob Costas? Whose fault is this at this moment?
And then Stanton stole a base, which was just phenomenal. But I don't know why he talks like Bill Shakespeare the entire time, too. He just goes on these, incredibly long soliloquies, and you're like, what are you talking about? I don't mind, honestly, I don't mind when announcers don't get that revved up when a play happens or whatever, specifically when you're watching these playoff games, and the majority of the people that are watching it are neutral, and it's a neutral broadcast. Supposedly. But he's so far removed from the game, it feels like, and he makes every call, it sounds like he's writing a poem, and it just drives me nuts.
Everything he says is in haiku.
Yeah.
I think you're right that he is more suited to write about baseball than do play-by-play. I've read one of his books, I think he's written multiple books about baseball. He's good in that way. He's no Roger Angel. He's no Peter Gammons in the sense that he wants to have these great stories about baseball. It's like, we got a pitch clock, Bob. You don't have time anymore to soliloquize. I hope my students are listening to hear that soliloquies really do matter in real life.
Could you say it one more time? I don't think you've said it enough in the last 30 seconds.
I don't think soliloquize is a word. I think anyway. So that was annoying too. I want to like Bob Costas, but he needs to be done. Give Corey Provost that job. I'd rather hear him.
That's probably where he will be if David has his thoughts right.
Yeah, I hope I'm wrong. I truly hope I'm wrong, and I hope he wants to be here forever. He seems like a guy who's a bit more sociable than Dick Bramer also. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but maybe that's part of it.
More sociable? What do you mean? Like he likes to hang out with more people? Is that?
I think he's probably not left-handed, and he probably doesn't spend all his free time on a lake, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm left-handed, for the record. But anyways. Anyway, Jazz Chisholm saying that the Royals got lucky when they won the game against the Yankees. Dude, it's baseball. There are occasions in baseball where luck has something to do with it, where you're playing at Fenway and you hit the ladder and it bounces with the weirdest spin you've ever seen to like where nobody is. Sure, that can happen. But when you're talking about an entire game, the Royals got lucky. Come on.
Well, and they've got like 3 times the payroll of the Royals, too, here. Like, it's picking on them. Come on.
Yeah, he's an unlikable Yankee in a long, long line of unlikable Yankees.
Game 3, Stanton hits a solo home run that turns out to be the game winner. Royals needed Game 3 badly, obviously. And then Game 4, the bench is clear after Garcia slides into second, and Anthony Volpe hits him in the neck with his forearm. Now, if you just watch the replay once, you probably look at this and think the same thing I did, which was, why on earth did he feel the need to hit him? It didn't really seem like Volpe needed to throw his forearm into the guy's neck. Now, if you watch the replay a couple more times, you can see that Garcia sort of swipes at his arm at the tag to try and get the ball loose. And so maybe that's why the forearm comes into play. I'm still sort of the contention that I don't think the forearm to the neck was necessary after the tag here.
I don't have a problem with any part of the play from either one of them, because I think Garcia did come in pretty hard. It was a legal slide, but he did have his arm up a little bit. Volpe kind of responded like that with like a pretty solid shove, obviously, to the neck. So I don't think either of those were that problematic. What would have bugged me a ton if I were Garcia was Volpe just patting him on the chest a bunch, and then when he walked away, slapping him on the back a bunch. Like that would have riled me up a ton, and he did pretty good of just running to the dugout. And then Garrett Cole, who may be my most hated player in baseball, comes out and starts Kermit the Frog chirping at him when he's on second base running back in. I cannot look at this with like anything other than Yankee hate tinted glasses, so it's hard to really give my opinion on it, but I wanted them to win so bad after all of that happened.
Last note here on this series, Bobby Witt Jr. stays out to watch the Yankees celebrate. Stanton comes over and says, gives him a little respect and whatnot, like, hey, thanks for being here. If you're in that position, do you sit and watch the other team celebrate? Like, sometimes I think where this is most prevalent is like college football, like in championship games or in like conference championships, where the players are just sort of out there and just sort of embracing their last moments on the field, if they're seniors, that sort of a thing. But Bobby Witt, it's not your last season as a Royals, my friend, and probably not your last season in the postseason. It just felt a little out of place.
I like it when guys do that. I think part of it is motivation for next year, because you see the players out there getting to the point where you would like to get. Granted, it's just getting to the ALCS, but still, like remembering what that feeling is, because you don't want to feel it again. That's how I always view it. So I always like those guys just kind of taking that moment. And I mean, it's a huge, long season, and I feel like there's some closure when you get that, when you're out there, and it just kind of all falls away a little bit, and you start thinking, I don't want to feel like this next year. So I like that. I think it's a good motivator.
Well, and what a season it was for the Royals, and what a season it was for Bobby Witt Jr. I mean, we're going to be watching him for a long, long, long time. As Twins fans, obviously, I have a lot of respect for him, a lot more respect for him than I have for most of the Yankees. So, yeah, I think it's hard to get inside his head and think anything else, but I don't have a lot of negative thoughts about Bobby Witt Jr. All
right, well, moving on to the Guardians-Tigers series. So Guardians win this one 3-2 over the Tigers. I have to be honest, boys. I had a lot of trouble cheering for either of these teams. Like, Royals-Yankees, obviously clear as day. You're a Royals fan in that instance. Guardians-Tigers, I probably leaned slightly Tigers, but I just really don't think the Guardians are that good, but they keep winning. It's really bothersome to me. The only note I really had on this series is Skubal gets into trouble in the fifth here of Game 5. Hinch leaves him in, and then he gives up a grand slam to Lane Thomas, who, believe it or not, a trade deadline acquisition. It's almost as if
that. You can get guys.
It's almost as if teams that care about winning make moves and spend money in order to better their team, in order for a better shot in the postseason.
It is funny though.
There he is beating that dead horse.
The Guardians, who have like one of the lower payrolls too, that they still went out and did something to. Yeah, it's just so frustrating.
Well, and so people are making the comparison to when Blake Snell got pulled in the fifth inning of his series last season. And I just don't know. I don't know. It's so hard. Like, I'm sure we would have criticized Rocco if he left Oberon in this situation. So I'm probably going to lean that direction, that you probably should have pulled him when he got into trouble. But at the same point, he's basically one of the best pitchers on the planet right now. So it's very difficult to make that move.
And who are they going to go to? Like Jason Foley in the 5th already? Like, it doesn't make any sense at that moment.
They have 4 relievers who look the same,
do.
Hogs. They got the mustache and the long hair, and they look like they live in a trailer and just absolutely crush Coors Lights all day.
And the Zin. They all got a Zin in their mouth, too. No, those guys actually, they just got the dip still. But yeah, I don't know. Scooble has been the best pitcher on the planet, like you said. You got to leave him in there. And he was phenomenal up until that. But yeah, I agree with you. It was a hard series. I kind of struggled watching it. I would end up getting distracted whenever I had it on because I truly didn't want either team to win.
Well, that's kind of how I felt about the Mets-Phillies for some reason. Like, I couldn't get a rooting interest in this one. The Mets do win this one 3-1 over the Phillies. But they were good baseball games. But in my heart, I guess I kind of at one point felt like maybe I wanted the Mets to win. But I didn't really want the Mets to win. I didn't want the Phillies to win either.
I wanted the Mets to win because I don't like Bryce Harper and I do like Pete Alonso.
See, I love Bryce Harper, but I view the Mets as like this lovable underdog, and which is the stupidest thing in the world.
It's so dumb. I understand why you feel that way, Hogs, and it's so funny because I feel the same way, and it's so dumb. Steve Cohen sold off 4 countries to buy the Mets, and then he sold off a 5th for the payroll, and we're like, listen to the Cinderella story about the Mets.
$350 million payroll. Like, ugh.
Oh my god! And people thinking that he's going to let Alonso walk. Are you kidding me? He's going to give him like $60 million a year or something for 70 years.
But it was cool seeing, and again, maybe the Twins can finally get an owner somewhat like this. I mean, not even like half of like this, but him talking about Lindor.
About $150 million, I'd take that.
Right? Talking about Lindor afterwards and being like, I bet you guys aren't questioning that 341 right now. Like, that was cool. It was sassy, and it was like, yeah, I did pay this guy a lot of money. Did you see him hit that grand slam there? That was pretty sweet, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is the attitude we want owners to have, I think, in this day and age, is we want them to be invested in the team, not necessarily doing jobs that they can't do. But if your job is to write big checks to great players, yeah, that's the owner I want.
Yeah.
The lone Phillies victory was a crazy game. If you want to go back and just watch the highlights of that game, I think it is worth it. The Mets tied it in the top of the 9th, but then the Phillies walk it off in the bottom. A little bit disappointing. It's a single after 2 walks that wins it for him, but still, it was an interesting game nonetheless. But I can't get over this. We've mentioned this a couple of times now. The Mets had to play a doubleheader the day before the postseason started, and now they're in the NLCS. I absolutely love it.
It's all about momentum, right? I mean, that's so much of the name of the game. You pointed this out earlier, Hogs. Like, you want to be playing good baseball at the end of the season. The Mets had to in order to get into the playoffs, and so yeah, good on them.
Well, with that, boys, what we have left is the Mets versus the Dodgers, and the Dodgers made quick work of the Mets here in Game 1. And then the Yankees and the Guardians, they play tomorrow. That's the championship series. I know the media and a lot of people are rooting for the Dodgers-Yankees World Series matchup that Dan Thompson has been hoping for.
Hoping is not what I said. I said, wouldn't it be the year if they did that? I wasn't rooting for it. I was resigned to it.
I don't know. I think I saw some drool when you were talking about it, talking about how nice it would be to see those two guys going.
It would be better if Ohtani was actually pitching, right?
That is
because
true.
to see Ohtani pitch to Judge, that would have been pretty dang cool.
All rise for Dan's Judge Love.
Couldn't wait.
So the question is, now that we know who the Final Four are, if you had your druthers, who do you want to see in the World Series?
All right, well, I will go first. I will say, for the record, I would like to see the Mets Guardians, but I don't think that's what's going to happen.
This is gaslighting. 100% gaslighting.
Yeah,
101.
right,
Dan
goodness.
Thompson, the whole time talking
That's
about
what I
the
wanna
Yankees,
see.
Dodgers, and then saying, oh, no, actually what I really want is the Cleveland
I want to see
Guardians
the Miracle
playing the
Mets play the Guardians, right? That's what I want.
Okay, but what do you actually want? You want the Yankees, Dodgers.
That's
like
what I
we
want. I
talked
want
about.
the Mets Guardians. That's what I want.
No, you don't. It could have
No,
it could have been any other team. It could have been any other teams. It could have been the Tigers and the Phillies, and you would have said them. Just so you didn't have to say Yankees, Dodgers, when we all know in your heart of hearts that's what you want to see.
You'll never know what's in my heart. You guys go ahead with your pick.
I just want the Yankees to lose. Like, I'm frustrated because I don't like the Dodgers, the Yankees, or the Guardians at all. Like, they're in my top 5 for most hated, I think I'd have to say. And then the Mets, that's what we talked about. Like, like, yeah, they're a very likable team, but they also have a payroll of $350 million. So I don't really feel like I need to be rooting for them. So yeah, not the Yankees. And I'm going to love watching these games because they're fun teams with a lot of like really interesting players. So I do like that, but I'm kind of hate watching it a little bit because I'm rooting for teams to lose instead of rooting for a team to win.
Come on into the Peter Alonso pool, Hogs. The water's fine.
What is a Peter Alonso pool?
That's where all the people who love Peter Alonso hang out.
What do you want to see then, David?
I would like to see the Mets-Yankees.
No, you want the Yankees to win?
I know. I understand what I'm saying right now.
Add the Yankees to the list. The Cowboys and the Yankees now that David apparently is a fan of. Do you like the Patriots too? Did that really make you happy watching them?
I just like the idea of the Mets from Queens and the Yankees from the Bronx playing each other. I think it's interesting. I think a lot of people, I understand the desire that Dan has for the Dodgers-Yankees. It would be cool to see Judge and Ohtani face off. But honestly, I do like just the New York thing. I think it'd be pretty interesting. And honestly, I want to see Pete Alonso raise that World Championship trophy as well as an MVP to go along with it.
I'm so mad at you right now. I can't believe you want that. Like that hurts my flyover country heart right there so much.
I'm going to say something crazy.
that wasn't already.
I'm having trouble not hating the Guardians right now more than I hate the Yankees.
No, it's not crazy.
Keep in mind,
I'm with you on that.
This is just, I'm very biased in this moment because this entire season I've said the Guardians aren't that good at baseball and they keep winning. And that is, I'm sure, playing a very heavy factor into my perspective right now. Because if I were a Guardians fan, I would have a Stephen Kwan jersey, no question. Like that would be the first thing I would buy. So I have a really hard time disliking the Guardians this much, but I just do. And so my perspective all season has been that they've overplayed how good their roster is. And so I'm just having a harder time hating on the Yankees with the vitriol that I would normally have for them.
This is stunning. I can't believe I'm the only rational one here.
Dan, you want the Yankees and the Dodgers. How is that rational?
All right. Well, we're going to see here. We probably should wrap this one up here. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this, what has become a very long episode talking about a lot of different things. Again, normally we have a little bit more structure to this, but we are glad that you're here. We hope that you will tell friends about our podcast and even join the Patreon if you would like. And with that, I think I'm gonna send us out formally here. Hogs, thank you for joining us in studio here for this episode. Live from your basement. Really appreciate that. Well, folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on X at Min for the Win. You can find our Min for the Win Facebook and Instagram pages as well. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on your favorite platform so you're notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating or a like, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to support the show further, you can find us on Patreon. The link is in the description. Thanks for listening, and as always, go Twins.
That'll wrap up another episode of Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.